It's one of London's most famous landmarks, a marvel of Victorian engineering, and it's appeared in everything from Sherlock Holmes to the Spice Girls movie to Peppa Pig. In this documentary from History Calling, I'm going to share with you the history of Tower Bridge, and even better, I'm going to show you what it looks like from the inside so that you can see what it's like to walk on its amazing glass floors, suspended above the traffic and water below. Make sure you stay to hear the incredible true story, though it sounds like a stunt from a Mission Impossible movie, of the bus that had to jump over the gap as the bridge began to open beneath it, plus the tales of some of the famous boats that have sailed under it and even crashed into it. The history of Tower Bridge, which is not to be confused with London Bridge, that's something else, starts in the 1870s, when calls for a new crossing over the Thames to ease traffic congestion gained steam, because yes, even the Victorians had traffic problems. In 1876, the Special Bridge or Subway Committee was established to look into the problem, and in 1879, the Metropolitan Board of Works received an application to build the bridge you see here at the location of the present tower. This bridge design was rejected, however, as being too low for the ships that traverse the River Thames. Other ideas continued to be objected to into the mid-1880s, until finally a bascule bridge, bascule being French for seesaw, was suggested by architect Sir Horace Jones. His original designs included an arch over the entire bridge, but this idea was dropped so that ship masts would not hit it, particularly at the lower parts of the arch. Instead, this fresh design, and Jones was now acting in collaboration with John Wolfe Barry, went to Parliament, showing the straight walkways across the top of the bridge which exist today, and which are all at the same height, unlike an arch would have been. The arms of the bridge, the bascules, were designed to lift vertically rather than swing out horizontally, so that their use of space would be more efficient. The bill for the building of the bridge, known as the Tower Bridge Act, passed in 1885, and construction began on the 22nd of April 1886, with Barry as the chief engineer. It had to be built to accord with the architecture of the tower, meaning the Tower of London, which is right next to it, according to a later book written by Barry, and part of the tower's ditch was even used for a portion of the works. Sadly, Jones died just a year into the project, and Barry was left to act as its overseer until the bridge was complete. Now, something I'd never thought about before making this video, but which occurred to me during my research, is what was the point in making a bridge which can open up to allow ships to pass through when London Bridge, just maybe half a mile further down the River Thames, and which you can see in this footage I shot, can't open up like that, so that ships can go no further in that direction? Why was it important to preserve ships' access to this short little piece of water in front of the Tower of London? I went hunting online to find an answer to this, and the best I can come up with is that it had to do with allowing ships continued access to the wharfs which are situated in that part of the river so that they could continue to onload and offload goods and passengers there. But if you have a better answer, please do share in the comments, because I was reduced to getting that answer from a Quora forum, which is hardly a reputable source. It took 8 years for the average of 432 workers employed to build the bridge to do so, and either 6 or 10 of them died along the way in work-related incidents. It depends which source you read. We have some fantastic pictures of the ongoing works to show how it all came together. This one shows the foundations going in very early in the building schedule, with the Tower of London in the background on screen left. Another allows us to see the skeleton of one of the two towers going up, and one evidently taken some time later shows the skeletons of both towers up and the beginnings of the walkways which would connect them. By the 24th of March 1893, it was approaching completion, as the helpfully dated photo on the left shows. If we look at an alternative angle in the photo next to it, which was presumably taken at around the same time, it is easy to recognise as the structure we see today. An image from that autumn shows further progression in the work, while it was almost ready and the scaffolding was coming down by the spring of 1894, The last granite stone had been laid in the turret of the South Tower on the 31st of January that year, completing the external masonry work. The bascules were being raised and lowered for testing that April and were weight tested in June to be sure they could safely support the traffic and pedestrians who would be crossing them. Tower Bridge was good to go. Costing around £1.6 million, the tops of the towers on the final structure are 162 feet, just over 49 metres above the roadway level, and 264 feet, 80.4 metres from the base of the structure's foundations. The bridge is 800 feet or 244 metres wide, and at the time of its construction, its opening span of 200 feet, nearly 61 metres, was the largest in the world. Its metalwork was originally a chocolate brown colour, supposedly because that was Queen Victoria's favourite shade, though it was repainted in the white, blue and touches of red that you see here for Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee in 1977. It contains 11,000 tonnes of steel and is clad in Cornish granite and Portland stone to make it aesthetically pleasing and protect the steel. The original roof was of Welsh slate. The two towers had to contain the hydraulics necessary to operate the lifting of the bascules, and they could be raised in just 60 seconds to an angle of 86 degrees. Initially, these hydraulics were operated by steam, and you can see the original engines here in the bridge's engine room. This is slightly separate from the rest of the bridge on the Tower of London side of the water, and you visit it as part of the bridge tour. As you can see from this plaque though, by 1977 it was all change. As it records, the installation of the electrical machinery for raising the bascules, replacing the original hydraulic equipment, was completed by the Trust, meaning the Bridge House Estates Trust, in 1977. There are two 10-feet wide footbridges above the main bridge, which were designed to be 142 feet or 42 metres above the Thames. I imagine that height fluctuates a bit depending on the water level, and which are 200 feet or 61 metres across. They can be accessed by lifts and staircases and didn't originally have glass floors, but we'll come back to that feature in a few minutes. The bridge was officially opened by the Prince and Princess of Wales, the future Edward VII and Queen Alexandra, on the 30th of June 1894 on behalf of Queen Victoria, and they were joined by their son, the future George V, and other members of the royal family. This plaque, which also mentions the presence of John Wolfe Barry, was added to the outside of one of the towers to commemorate the event. 100 years later, a different Prince of Wales, the future Charles III, unveiled this plaque to mark the bridge's centenary. By July 1894, it was facilitating the passage of around 8,000 horse-drawn vehicles and 60,000 pedestrians every day, in much the same way as we see in this footage from the 1920s. So that's how the bridge was built and opened, but what's happened to it since then? Tower Bridge has had, and continues to have, a fascinating history, and is now one of the most recognisable features of London, appearing on every kind of merchandise you can imagine. In 1910, the footbridges above the bascules were closed due to lack of use, which I find crazy because walking over them is so fun and gives you such an interesting view of the tower and the surrounding area. They only reopened in 1982, by which point many other interesting occurrences had happened in and around the bridge. On the 10th of August 1912, aviator Frank McLean flew underneath the walkways and above the bascules. The plane was of course very small, for powered aviation was only 9 years old at this point, and if you want to know more about it, you can watch my video about the famed Wright brothers flight back in 1903. McLean would later say that, "It isn't so risky as it appears, for the arches of the bridges are tremendous things when you get close to them." He spoke too soon though, for on his way back the wind blew him into the water of the Thames. He was fine however, and the plane was towed to safety and repaired. The Second World War wasn't particularly kind to the bridge. Its roof was damaged during the Blitz and had to be replaced between 1949 and 1952 with slate from the Lake District. It was also in the latter year that one of the most famous mishaps the bridge has ever experienced took place. Before I spill the beans on that incident though, and I'll be including quotes from people directly involved in it, If you're enjoying this content, please give the video a thumbs up as this helps it to rise to the top with YouTube, and subscribe to the channel with the notification bell switched on to never miss any of my content. For more from me, you can also become a YouTube member by clicking the join button underneath videos and following the on-screen instructions. Or you can join my Patreon community where I share bonus material every week, including early access to ad-free videos, mini podcasts, and behind-the-scenes blogs and vlogs. Those of you with Irish ancestry might like to check out my book, Find Your Irish Ancestors Online, available in electronic and paperback formats from Amazon, and anyone is welcome to sign up to my mailing list for free and get 2 complimentary downloads as well. You can do that on my website, historycallingofficial.com, and all the links you'll need for these things and others are below for you. At about 9:35 p.m. on the 30th of December 1952, the number 78 bus, being driven by a Mr. Albert Gunter, found itself in the middle of the bridge as it started to open. The driver had to floor it, bringing the bus's speed up to a whopping 12 miles per hour, and bus, driver and passengers jumped the gap to safety on the other side, dropping about 3 feet in the process. Gunter was later quoted in the Times newspaper as saying, "I had to keep going, otherwise we should have been in the water. I suddenly saw the road in front of me appear to be sinking. In fact, the bus was being lifted by one half of the bridge. The other half was stationary as the bus crashed onto it on 4 wheels. Peter Dunn, who was one of the passengers, also described the incident, saying, "Before we knew it, we were going across Tower Bridge, but just as we had gone over the first half of the section that goes up, there was a loud crashing sound and I was thrown onto the floor. The bus came to a halt and the driver came round to invite us to have a look at the gap that had opened on the opposite half. The driver then told us that as he started to drive across the opening part of the bridge, he realised that the side that the bus was on was going up. He said he could only think of 2 options as to what to do. One was to stop the bus and hope someone would realise what was happening and stop it, but that left the possibility of the bus slipping back and perhaps toppling into the river. The other was to continue driving and to jump the gap." He said that he had been a tank driver during the war and that a tank would have had no trouble getting onto the other side, and decided to see if a double-decker could do the same. So, to his quick thinking, we were all delivered safe to the other side. 10 people were taken to hospital as a precaution, but everyone was more or less okay, although the conductor had a broken leg and 1 passenger had a fractured collarbone. The bus had a bent chassis, a broken spring and some dislodged seats, but was otherwise undamaged. The driver was given a day off work and a £10 reward for his efforts from the London Transport Executive, which was, quote, "in recognition of his resourcefulness and skill. He said he'd keep £5 for himself and give 5 to the missus." I found a clip on the BBC News website of the original news report in which you can hear him saying this, and have left it linked below for you. The article with it also states that Gunter later received a reward of £35 from the City Corporation and a week's holiday in Bournemouth. His children were invited to the Lord Mayor's children's party. Finally, and I thought this was quite nice, he went to the wedding of one of his passengers in September 1953, having made friends with her after the incident. If you're curious, according to the Bank of England, the £10 reward would be worth about £245 today, while the £35 would be about £833. As for why the bridge had opened with a London bus in the middle of crossing it, that was human error. According to the bridge's own website, back in the 1950s, a watchman was supposed to ring a warning bell and close the gates before Tower Bridge opened. On that particular day, he somehow forgot to do so. The Corporation of London accepted responsibility for the whole thing, with the Bridge House Estates Committee issuing a statement which said that there had been an error of judgment on the part of the responsible employee at the bridge. I bet we'll all take the warnings on London transport to please mind the gap a lot more seriously now. You can see this famous incident recreated in the Spice Girls movie and an episode of Peppa Pig, with Queen Elizabeth II driving. So much for people going over the bridge. There have also been some famous ships which have sailed under it. Now, of course, small ships go under it all the time, and the bridge doesn't need to be raised for them, as you can see in this footage I shot from the Tower of London a few years ago. But others are too big to do this, and so the bridge has to be closed to traffic and pedestrians and raised. I've actually left a link to a video in the description box which shows a modern cruise liner going through it, and I swear you won't think it's going to fit until it does. It's remarkable. The very first ship to do this did so on the day the bridge officially opened, and it was the harbour master's vessel called Daisy. Then there was the Royal Yacht Britannia, which passed beneath it in 1954, bringing the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh back from a 6-month tour of the Commonwealth. It would go under it again in 1997, shortly before being decommissioned and sent to Edinburgh, where it is now a very interesting tourist attraction. I went a few years ago, and it's well worth a visit if you're in town. Speaking of ships worth a visit, there's also HMS Belfast, which has been docked right next to the bridge since 1971, and which I of course have a soft spot for, because Belfast is my capital city. Some ships didn't make it successfully under the bridge though, or at least not on the first attempt. The Spanish cargo ship, the Urquiola, bumped into the bridge structure 3 times in 10 years during the 1950s and 60s, and in 2004, the STS Lord Nelson, which is a tall ship, crashed into the south pier of the bridge. Its crew had expected it to lift, only to find that it didn't because no lift notice had ever been filed with bridge authorities. By the time those on board realised the problem, it was too late to stop or get turned around. No one was hurt though, and damage was minimal. Incidentally, if you'd like a chance at seeing the bath schools open, the schedule of when they will be lifted is published ahead of time online. Again, I'll leave the relevant website linked below for you, and if you're in London, you can maybe check it out. The bridge has also played a role in major cultural events, most notably in 2012 when the Olympic Games came to London, and Tower Bridge was decorated with a set of Olympic rings in honour of the occasion. That was a once-in-a-lifetime sight, but something you can see very regularly if you arrange to visit the bridge are the glass floors in the pedestrian walkways. These allow you to walk over the top of the traffic and river below, so let's take a closer look at them and at what it's like to experience walking on them. These glass floors were only installed in 2014, and I think they were a great idea. They make the whole experience of visiting extra fun. Here you can see some footage I shot when I visited myself, and let me tell you, it was quite disconcerting to walk in this. The logical part of your brain is saying, it's fine, they've tested it, it can take far more than your weight, you're not going to die, look at all these people around you, they're fine, don't be a wuss. However, the part of your brain that controls your basic survival instinct, you know, the bit that told cavemen to run away from wolves and mammoths and snakes, is screaming very loudly, what are you doing? Don't you dare step out on that, don't you dare. And then once you do, it's screaming, get back on that solid looking floor over there, you moron. This kind of behaviour is why you're not allowed near parachutes or paragliders. So that's what was going through my mind when I filmed this. Yet oddly enough, despite feeling like this on the glass floors of Tower Bridge, I don't mind flying in an airplane. Go figure. In my defence, it wasn't just me who was a little apprehensive though. I saw and even spoke to a couple of girls in front of me who took a really long time to venture out onto the glass and then stayed very close to the edge. Conversely, other people were plonking their babies in the middle of it and taking photos for Instagram, in much the same way as you'll see on YouTube when you see those videos of babies and toddlers photographed in front of the glass enclosure around lion pens at a zoo, while a giant lion tries to get at them from the other side and their mummies and daddies are taking pictures and footage and laughing. It just goes to show how different people are, and that's okay. If you want to visit yourself, let me just emphasise again that as you can see in my footage, you can walk around the outside of the glass, so you don't have to go on it if you don't want to. There's also a mirrored ceiling to facilitate the best possible selfies, which you can see here. I cropped myself out of the top of the picture if you're wondering how I took this. Nowadays, the inside of the towers and the walkways are also home to an exhibition about the bridge's history, and here's a little peek for those of you who maybe can't travel to London. This is inside one of the towers at the beginning of the tour. I particularly like the models of workmen that are perched on the beams, and you can see the information video running in the background and the information boards. From what I recall, we were given a short little talk about the history of the bridge in here, then left to self-guide through the rest of the structure. The 2 parallel walkways are undoubtedly the highlight of the whole thing, and here we are looking across from one to the other. I can only apologise for the rain. That's English weather for you. I got drenched on my way into the bridge that morning and lots of my footage has water droplets on it. Then the sun came out later on, which is just typical. I also have a quick little shot of the inside of one of the walkways, though if I show you a still image inside one of them, I think that gives you a better idea of what they're like, if only because we can look at it for longer. I was a little surprised to find that we were allowed to open the windows for some raindrop-free shots of the River Thames and the London skyline, as I did here, terrified the whole time in case I dropped my GoPro out. Of course, it's not just in the walkways that you get unusual views. Here we are coming back down inside one of the towers with a great shot out over the bridge, and if we stay with this footage as I headed on down the stairs, you get a glimpse of the internal structure of the building, the original brown colour of its metalwork, and some more of the exhibitions they have on there. Is it any wonder I included this in my video about things to do in London, which I will leave linked below for you. I hope you've enjoyed that history of Tower Bridge and the little look inside it that I was able to give you. If you'd like to learn more about it, especially the nitty-gritty of the engineering side of it and the physics of it all, I've left a published lecture given by John Wolfe-Barry linked below for you, as this was one of my main sources for the construction section of this video. Let me know in the comments if you like the look of the bridge, because some people at the time of its building really didn't, and for more London history, try my videos on Buckingham Palace, Old St Paul's Cathedral, or on 20 historically themed things to visit if you're in this city. Whatever you choose, please enjoy, and until next time, keep learning.